Guys, it's Sunbury Housewives. Welcome back to another video. If you're new to our channel, thank you so much for stopping by. Hit the subscribe button to see future videos. I post new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. So today I'm making a really pretty, simple, handled tumbler. So let's go ahead and jump right in the video. So I'm using a 20-ounce hoggdle from the Stainless Steel Depot. It's a 20-ounce handled tumbler. So I'm using this beautiful vinyl from the It's Pretty Personal Tiffany Rose, and it's absolutely stunning. So I knew I had to use this. So, like I said, this is a handled, straight, skinny tumbler, and I'm going to use my most favorite way to measure vinyl by just laying my tumbler right on top of the vinyl and using a pen. So I just lay the tumbler on top and see where I want to pretty much cut the vinyl. I knew I wanted this to go right underneath the to where the top of the bottom tumbler. So I'm going to cut it just a little bit longer and then trim it off later. So that's what I'm doing here, marking it, and I don't know why I'm wrapping it completely. I know it's going to go all the way around, so I don't know why I did that, but I did. And then I'm going to use my paper trimmer to completely cut off the portion that I need. So, yeah, I just marked it off, and then I'm going to grab my paper trimmer, cut the portion that I need, set aside the portion I'm not going to use so that I can use it down the road. Everything that I'm using will be listed in the description box below, so make sure you check that out. Since this has a handle, it already has a natural line, so I'm going to use my handle to line up the vinyl. So I just butt it right up against it, and it was quite staticky in my room that day, so I kept wanting to grasp on it, so I had a little bit of struggle with it, but I did ultimately get it. And then I will use my squeegee to lay it down really nicely. I had hardly any bubbles. The few that I did, I just popped those with my weeding pen super quick and moved right along. So once I got around to the other side, I did cut off the excess backing to make it easier to see what I was doing once I got to that other side of the handle, so that I knew where I needed to cut to be able to lay the rest of the vinyl down underneath the handle. And I just took my craft knife and cut little slits and up and around the inside of the handle so that I could lay it down, and then cut off the excess on the other side of the handle, because I'm going to use that a little later to make a matching pen. So that is what I'm doing here, and I cut it as close as possible so there wasn't too many gaps, because I wanted it to be as seamless as possible. This isn't a seamless pattern, obviously, so it's not 100% perfect, but it matched up pretty nicely. So once all that excess vinyl was taken off, I did take some masking tape, and then I started to cut on the wrong end, and I realized my mistake. you can't see because the handle's in the way, but I quickly took that off and then realigned the tape and then cut off the excess on the other side to get a straight line, to cut off the excess and have a very straight line, and pulled away all of the excess vinyl to make sure that the line on the other side was perfectly straight. And then I will take another piece of masking tape once I get all the excess vinyl pulled off on that side and clean up any extra that needs to be pulled up and go around to where I can pull off the bottom portion of that to where it just lines up at the bottom edge of the top of the bottom of the handle. It'll make sense here in a second. I'm putting the masking tape on right now. There you go. And cut off all of that excess vinyl. Like I said, I just wanted it to go just above to where the bottom of the handle was. And then all of the bottom portion will be a glitter. And the handle will be glitter as well. So I pull off that. I should have left my masking tape on. But once again, I don't make things easy for myself. So then I'm pulling up the edge of the vinyl on top, and I'm going to cut all of the excess off. So I go around cutting it all off, and then I will go around again a second time at a 45-degree angle and cutting to expose a thin band of the stainless that will allow the final coats of our epoxy to have something to adhere to. So when you do this, you want to make sure that you have a very sharp blade in your craft knife so that you don't get a bunch of jagged edges. So here I'm reapplying the tape so that I can then paint the tumbler, and I also am going to tape off around the handle so that I don't get any paint onto our gorgeous vinyl. And I mixed up my own paint. I did like a seafoam green, some blue, and a little bit of white to kind of get this Tiffany bluish color of paint. I think I did a fairly decent job of matching. Not perfect, but close enough. So I do give it 2 coats of paint, allowing it to dry each time. Once the paint has had time to dry, I did mix up 5 milliliters of Mr. Nola's Fast Set. I'm not going to use all 5 milliliters, but this just gives something for the glitter to hold on to. You want to use a really thin coat. Otherwise, your glitter will appear extremely wet, and you do not want that. And don't forget your handle, and you want to make sure that you're very careful with your handle because your epoxy tends to pull up around your handle, and you definitely don't want that either. And so I'm very diligent with being cautious and just using the barest minimum on the handle so that it gets a nice coat, but not too much, and just sort of baby the handle, if that makes any sense at all. So once I get all of my epoxy and I make sure that it's nice and covered, I will use or get out my glitter, and I'm using Glitter Heart Co. Daydreamer. But I will list it in the description box below. But it was the closest that I had to the vinyl, and I think combined with the paint, it worked very nicely. So I tap off all the excess and make sure that I did have it all covered. And then I will go ahead and remove my tape immediately. You do not want that tape to stay on and get set up in the epoxy. It'll be almost impossible to remove without ruining your tumbler. And then since this is a fast set, this should be ready. And since we use such a thin coat, it'll be ready in probably about an hour, at the most 2 hours, to go into the first coat of epoxy. And I will be able, well, I have to seal it first after that, or before I even do the epoxy. But anyway, it'll be ready within the first hour to 2 hours to seal. That is what I meant to say. Speak, shall speak. Anyway, so now that that is ready to set aside to cure, I'm going to move into working on our matching pen, which I'm so excited about. I've worked on pens in the past, but I've never done a pen, working on a pen on here. Look how beautiful this is. I'm so excited about it. I just think this is absolutely beautiful. I'm so enamored by it. Okay, so anyway, the Permanent Ink Joy gel pens. And there's my piece of scrap that I'm going to use. So the first thing you want to do is take these pens apart. The tip of the pen screws off. And to tell you that I struggled with getting this tip off is not an understatement. So it took me a second to get that thing unscrewed. It was like it was glued on there, but it wasn't. My arthritis was bugging me, and I just couldn't get it to get unscrewed. So I worked on it for a little bit and finally got it. So you want to remove all of the pieces. This tip screws out, and then the middle, the ink comes out, and then you just kind of have to tap the end out, and those pieces come out. Set these aside, stick them in a cup, something so you don't lose these pieces. You lose those pieces, you're just kind of, it's no good anymore. So I did put this in a cup so that I didn't lose everything, and I set those aside. So then what you want to do is set your extra pens aside, and then this has that little like clip thing. You just want to tear that thing off, and it leaves little nubbies. So I took my craft knife and I just scraped those off until they were kind of smooth, and kept cutting away until I knew that those were nice and smooth. And then I would also take my sanding block and smooth them out even more. And then I kept going back and forth between scraping off anything that was kind of raised and sanding. And you want to make sure that you do sand the entire pen anyway. And then once I knew that everything was either sanded or just smooth, I then took the entire pen and cleaned it up with 91% rubbing alcohol. That's what I wanted to say. And cleaned the pen. And then I took my extra piece, kind of straightened it out just as much as possible with just cutting it. And then laid it in the center of the pen and put it on there. And then I cut off the excess that I didn't need with my craft knife. So then I did take some masking tape and taped off the ends of each of the vinyl so that I didn't get paint on it. And we'll paint the same color that I did the tumbler, each end of the pen. And then I did give it 2 coats, and this I did use the paint as an adhesive. The second coat, I believe it was. So that's what I am doing here. And I do use the same Daydreamer glitter as well. And because I'm impatient, I do use my heat gun to dry the first coat. And strangely enough, by the time I got to the second one, the second coat on the bottom had already dried, so I had to repaint that one. Don't know how that happened. It's not the quickest drying paint ever. So I did re-glitter that, or repaint that. So it had a third coat on the bottom. So then I set that off to dry. And then after 2 coats of epoxy on the tumbler, it was time to stripe the tumbler. And I had given the pen also a coat of epoxy. So just cut out stripes and then put it around the tumbler. And I cut it off in the center underneath the handle, which proved to be a bit of a struggle because it's hard to work underneath that handle. But once I did that, I did seal it with CC DIY Quick Coat so that my vinyl would not lift. And I also did stripe the pen as well on each end. After I cleaned, I just run my craft knife around each end of the pen to get any excess epoxy out from underneath the holes. And I sanded a little bit. That glitter was a little bumpy, but for the pen I had only done 1 coat of epoxy. So I could have done another coat, but I was running a little behind on this one to get the tutorial done. It does end up having its full coats by the time this tutorial goes up, but I did just wrap around like I did with the tumbler, cut it off, and then the same on the other end. And then these both get sealed with the CC DIY Quick Coat for their final coats of epoxy. However, putting the pen after they're done being cured, putting the pen back together, I had to make sure I knew which end went where. The top of the pen has the screw on, so I knew that was the top of the pen. So I dump in the bottom, put the ink back in, and then screw on the lid. So that was actually fairly easy to put in. But this pen just turned out super gorgeous. And I love that it's a matching set. Made sure it worked, and it did. And look how beautiful that looks. Love it. And then here is the tumbler. I think it's so beautiful. It's not overdone. and if someone wants to purchase it, they can have a name put on the bottom or even on the top if they want. It's their choice. And then I had a little extra epoxy left over at one point, so I decided to make a straw topper. And look how cute this is. It matches, and I just love how this turned out. But like I said, this will be available on the website if you feel so inclined. And thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a great big thumbs up. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.